You're listening to the Big Cast, your source for the latest in financial technology. Brought to you weekly by the Best Innovation Group, with your hosts, John Best and Glenn Sarvati.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of the Big Cast. And the big question is it me or is it AI? You be the judge.
It used to be
I'm
Memorex.
excited.
It used to be Memorex, and now we have to ask if it's AI.
Is it real or is it Memorex? Yeah, well, a lot of guys make a good living pretend to be that Memorex man out in the streets of New York, you know? Anyways, my name's John Best. I am the CEO of Best Innovation Group. And today I have with me my partner in crime, my good friend, and one of the smartest people I know, Glenn Sarvati. Hey, Glenn.
Be careful with that partner in crime stuff, given the topics we're touching on.
Well, you are. I mean, you will be implicated by at least association.
By being here, yeah.
Yeah, you're guilt by association. I mean, we've only done literally there's 400 podcasts out there together. So I think you're kind of stuck with me, kind of like those stuff you should know guys. Anyways, so we had some topics lined up, and I think things are moving fast. So I wanted to start off with the Apple savings, and I wanted to I kind of want to interview you a little bit about it, but I want to talk a little bit about that. I am fortunate enough that for an upcoming event, I have the opportunity to interview Steve Wozniak.
Oh, really? Wow, yep. I did not know that. And you can tell by my voice, I'm not only surprised.
Yeah, I knew it'd be a surprise for you, so I saved it.
Very impressed.
One of the things I plan on asking him about, and this is for TrueStage, formerly CUNA Mutual, their event coming up. So it's a recorded event. It's not like I'm not going to be in the same room with him. I think he still has a restraining order against me, as far as I know. But one of the things, we certainly wanted to talk about is this Apple savings account. And it was interesting. My wife came to me yesterday and she says, I wanted to open an Apple savings account, but I can't without an Apple card. And I said, Now I have an Apple card, but I didn't open an Apple savings account. So I know there's been some rumblings, but I've been so focused on GPT stuff that I've missed out. So can you catch me up?
Sure. I mean, this story, well, I guess depending on when this airs, it'll be about 4 days old. But the Wall Street Journal has a story that made the front page of their marketplace, their second section, that the Apple savings account has started to get some static because of people who cannot get their money out of the Apple savings account, which is kind of the concept of a bank account. You can actually put money in and you can take money out. The putting in seems to be working just fine. The taking money out has been a little bit more challenging than I think people expected. Now, having read a little more of the details, I feel at first I have to admit I got kind of the devilish grin saying, gee, isn't it a shame that somebody like Apple is having these problems? But it looks like, it might be a bit of an overstatement. But having said that, it's still one of those, this stuff's never as easy as it seems. When tech companies come in and try to do something that banks have been doing forever and think that there was nothing to it. Now, again, remember, they're partnered with Goldman Sachs. So this is probably more Goldman than Apple, but it's the Apple brand that's sitting on it. So when you talk about, the ease of service, the customer experience being their calling card, this is obviously not the kind of press that they want.
So what exactly is the problem? I mean, I would think my thought is you would ACH money in or get it in there somehow. And then when you wanted it, you would have it transfer over to because they're not going to let you have one unless you have an Apple card.
Exactly, which is a pretty fascinating and I think pretty darn savvy marketing ploy right there.
I think so too.
I mean, and again, the draw to the Apple savings is that they are offering 4% and change. I forget.
Which is far and above anything you can find anywhere.
Well, unless you're going to go with, big CDs. And
well, that's what I was going to say. But apparently, if you can't get your money out, isn't it sort of a CD by definition?
Bought a CD, right?
Maybe like an eternal CD. I don't know.
Well, and that's where the story does get a little bit interesting because the examples that they gave of people who did this, you can always find in for an article, a couple of outliers. So I don't know how many people are actually running into these challenges. They did, they were intrigued and very attracted by that high rate. And they did put in tens of thousands, in a couple cases, $100,000 in order to, take advantage of that 4+% rate. Then when they went to take it out, and again, the point is when you do a CD, the money's going to sit there for a while. The money didn't come out right away. And if you read between the lines, and they're very cautious about how much information they're giving because they're saying, well, we can't give away our fraud protection, kind of secrets, as well as any individual situations of, disclosing financial circumstances of individual accounts, which would not be fair either. But what I'm hearing is that it was basically fraud and anti-money laundering detection triggers that were put off, particularly if the money came into Apple from one account and then the request came to take it back out into another account. That seemed to trip triggers saying, maybe someone's just kind of laundering money through here. Now, we're not talking, and that is a pretty common way to do money laundering. If it's extremely high frequency, like the stuff moved in and out in like a day, I could see that being a problem. The Apple account hasn't been out there that long. So by definition, depending on what you consider short term, these were all happening within the course of probably 2-3 months. That seemed to be the thing that seemed to be the common thread with at least a couple of them. The one example that was in the story was somebody who needed, or I don't know if he knew this was going to happen, if it was always intended to be a temporary parking spot, but he bought a house and needed that money to then actually make the down payment. And so
he was going
to make the down payment, and he couldn't get the money out.
Right, and which, by the way, they check and make sure you have that before they let you buy the house.
And that's the kind of thing, again, where, of course, it's going out to a different account because he put it in from his own savings account, and now he's actually paying somebody with it. So that was,
and it's probably also, I assume it's still holding the Reg D.
Well, that's an interesting question too. Yeah, I mean, there's always that fine print that says if you ask for your money back, most banks will avoid this by at all costs, but they have, I think, 48 or 72 hours to actually give you your money back if push comes to shove. But a couple of these cases were going on for weeks. These went on for 2 or 3 weeks before and the other part that was more troubling, a couple of the people they spoke to, the money was removed from the posted balance. Like, this is a digital account, so the only place you can go is online to see what your balance is, and the money is no longer showing in your Apple savings balance, but it hasn't shown up in the other account. So all of a sudden, it looks like your money has just vanished. So
it's vanished into the Apple's Tim Cook retirement fund. No,
well, as they pointed out, this is Apple's marketing maneuver, and probably to really move the meter on their Apple Card.
But let me ask a question.
Credit card. Right. Let me just finish this real quickly. Marcus, this is a deposit gathering strategy. Well, one good way to gather deposits is by never allowing people to withdraw.
Yeah, but I have a different twist on it. I just went, and it was kind of what you said at the top of the story, which is Apple is known for high touch, high tech, service. They got their Genius bars. I assume that one day they'll have, the Apple Savings Genius bar, which will really kind of transmit. But how much do you think it hurts when a rollout like this goes bad, and does Apple understand that? So for instance, it's kind of like, I equate it like this. If I see a new great place and I go, my wife and I go, yeah, we want to stop by there and eat, but we go there the first time and it's got a sign on it that says, yeah, we're not open on Mondays, which wasn't clear to us, or for some reason we can't get in. Usually that sort of tarnishes our excitement about that place, and a lot of times we don't get to it for a while. And do you think the same is true for a rollout like this, where a lot of people were watching, and when it didn't work for other people, this just kind of, did it kill it, or can it come back? Or
that's an interesting point. The one key that you just mentioned is, the example you gave is you drove by this new restaurant for the first time. So in this case, as you pointed out, to get an Apple savings account, you had to have an Apple Card. To have an Apple Card, you have to have an iPhone. So they're really doing effectively almost a soft launch, even though they're promoting this, because they're only giving it to people who have already pretty much bought into the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah, but it's one thing to get credit from them, and another to give them a whole bunch of your money.
Agreed. But I think they probably have enough goodwill that
they'll survive it.
Frankly, I think the Wall Street Journal article probably did them a lot more harm than the actual stubbing of their toe with those few customers. I mean, if you ask those customers, are you going to now stop using the Apple Card or the Apple iPhone? Probably not. Are they still going to use the Apple Savings? Probably not. But it is an interesting point. But the other thing that you said is, the whole notion of high touch. Wouldn't it be interesting if the Genius Bar started to actually support Apple Card and Apple Savings? Because wouldn't that look a little like a physical bank branch?
I'm about. I've been I said that. Did I not say this on the show? Did I just think it? I've been thinking that for a long time. As soon as they did it, I was like, oh, they're going to turn. I mean, it was like, I was just a foregone conclusion.
I mean, when you think about, if you think about the high touch, and I had not thought of that. If you said it, you didn't say it to me, because at least I don't remember, and my memory is fading. So,
there's a lot of cannabis in Colorado. Who knows?
but the gummy jars have it.
Well, I know you're, with 420. But no,
but it's an interesting point, because, as you say, Apple is known for high touch, and by definition, this is a digital only account. So is digital only, and now again, unless you segment your market to the point that really only want to engage digitally, it could be very elegant digital only, but is that high touch by the definition of a broad population? It's an interesting.
Well, I mean, if you can go in and have, the thing is, the way it's set up now is it's like a trough, and the horses come wandering in, and there's like 2 or 3 guys up front to sort of guide you to the trough. And then everybody sits on a thing and waits back there, and people try to help them. They ain't going to work for finances. So they'll have to rethink things.
I'm like, I don't remember seeing horses in the Apple store. What are you talking? And then now I picture what you're saying. Yeah,
it is. It's just like, if you go back towards that, it's always in the back of the store. It's got a big booth or whatever, or a big bar.
It's like the milk at the back of the.
And it looks a lot like the local seniors home. No offense. And I, by the way, of which I am now, headed that way. I think my AARP card's coming.
Congratulations.
But yeah, I think that, that's, it's just curious what their long-term game is.
Yeah, it is. I agree. And it's interesting in many ways. I do think that the Wall Street Journal article was overblown. But having said that, it raises some very interesting questions about exactly how this goes. And it is example number 579. Probably I'm way underestimating that, of people thinking that banking operations are easier than they really are. What my old coworker used to call messyware. It's supposed to work very seamlessly, but there's an awful lot of ugly stuff that goes on behind the scenes to make sure it looks seamless. And it's one of those examples.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be magic to the staff. It just has to be magic to the customer.
Exactly. Good way of putting it. I like that.
Yeah, nobody needs to. It's like one time I got to visit behind the scenes of a very, very successful theme park company in Florida. And I went to their scary exhibit. I'm trying to not give away who it is.
You're doing a great job, by the way.
This organization is well known for how clean their grounds are and everything. And then when I went behind this, when I got to see behind the scenes at this storied, scary exhibit that has been around since you and I were kids, there's like a milk crate holding up one of the things, and like, yeah, well, there you go. Hey, let's switch topics. I got something I want to talk about.
Yeah, go for it.
So, I don't know if you've noticed, but AI seems to be, really dominating all conversations.
I think we ought to post a link, now that I'm thinking about it. You've done some great conversations about AI on the CU Digital Town Hall. And I know the replays are out there, and you spent a good bit of time going through, voice recognition. You did a whole bunch on ChatGPT, which was fascinating. And then more recently, kind of diving into what people can do to actually spoof voices too. So I'll post some links to that. And I know you've been just using up a lot of your time kind of digging into this. And I've seen a couple articles, online. The Financial Branch said, if you're not at least exploring the generative AI world in terms of what it can mean for your business, that's inexcusable. So well, you're ahead of the game there. You're getting.
Well, let me tell you what I think this is. You want to hear my analogy?
Please.
I mean, why not? We're here on a podcast. It seems like that's what we're here for. In the 90s, late 90s, as the internet began to come out, there started to be stores on the web, if you remember, and people were selling things. And much of the time, it was a scary place. It was brand new. And so people were putting their credit cards into things like the very early eBay, which PayPal didn't exist yet, or a version of it. Maybe they hadn't, gotten in there. And a lot of fraud kind of came up out of it. And there were 2 approaches that were taken. The credit union's approach during the 90s the late 90s into 2000 was, let's educate all of our membership to not ever put those cards into these horrible, scary internet sites, and
Yeah.
let's entertain them, or let's educate them on that. The bigger credit union companies, the Capital Ones and others, took a different approach. Hey, you're all good up to $50. Go ahead. Now, when you look back on this, hindsight wise, you realize that it was a brilliant move on the bigger credit union cards companies, because it turned out there was a first mover advantage to getting the cards in there initially.
Market share grab, yeah.
Right. And they also, and maybe they knew this, maybe they didn't, but once you get a card in there and you type in all that information, you're not likely to go and change it.
It's
so as a result,
the modern version of top of wallet. Exactly.
Right. Top of app. And so as a result, whenever I talk to credit unions, I usually ask them, hey, how many credit cards you got? And they'll usually give me a nice number, usually somewhere past a third of the credit union will have a credit card. And I'll say, well, let's run a little numbers and see how many of those credit cards are being used by Amazon. And you've heard my story on this. It's almost always less than like 5%, but the reality is that pretty much every one of those credit card holders, or close to 90% of them, we all agree probably have an Amazon account.
Mm-hmm.
And so they missed out on that. And as a result, they've been playing catch up for years. And you can, if you think about all of the interchange money that's been left on the table because of that. Now, there are other reasons for people not using those credit cards. I'm not going to pin it all on that moment, because we didn't keep up and still haven't kept up with rewards and some of the things that are valuable to people that use credit cards to pay all the time. But the loyal credit union customers, particularly the members that were out there, were following our rules. Hey, we did what you said. We did plenty of that. We put their crap in there. Let them get hacked, and there they are. I feel like we're in that same boat here. And here's the reason. Much like the internet, well, even worse, this AI stuff is moving faster than anything I have ever seen in my, I'm going to call it, I started doing this in my 20s, my 33 years of working in tech.
You make a good point. They always show those charts where the adoption curve just keeps getting faster and faster. And it's a great thought exercise. Think of how recently it was where, the average person on the street had never even heard of ChatGPT. And look at how many people are actually actively using it, or at least you can just throw it out there as a buzzword and everybody immediately nods and knows what you're talking about. I mean, literally 90 days.
Oh, yeah. And, they set a record in February for the fastest growing thing ever in the history of stuff.
History of stuff.
In the history of things, like, for example, and I was trying to decide yesterday, what is the most, what could I say, or what could I equate this to as far as a discovery? Now, the internet's not really as good a one. It's close, but what other tool, really kind of gave you all these other things, right? So people are using it for music. People are using it, I saw an article yesterday where they're taking MRIs. So they put you in an MRI chamber. They start showing you pictures. They have the AI monitor what your brain is doing. They tell the AI what you saw. And after a while of training, what they do is they show you a picture, but they don't tell the AI what you saw, and it can reproduce that picture and tell you what you were thinking about it. And It was like 90% right.
Wow.
Yeah. So what does that mean? It means that maybe someday in the future, blind people could see. Like, if we could stimulate those same neurons in the brain and we know which ones to stimulate to make a picture show up, maybe you could stick a camera in someone's glasses. And it's crazy stuff. It's crazy, 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 crazy. Did you see the news yesterday, or actually a couple of days ago? This antibiotic that we've been working on for years, that was supposedly had 10 more years of work needed for it, that does not have the problem that current antibiotics have, which is, one, apparently things building resistance to it, and two, killing off a lot of your own good bacteria or the things, all the issues we have with antibiotics today. They cut those 10 years down to a year, and it's already being tested in chimpanzees. Now, does that mean it'll be out tomorrow? No, But when you take something that was 10 years and make it a year, that's exponential
I did not see
technology.
that. I did not see that. Wow.
Yeah. So all of this is happening, and people have got to look at it. So, but it's interesting from a statistic standpoint. You were just mentioning, how quickly this has grown up. It was interesting that among respondents aged between 18 and 29 years old, 48% had witnessed someone else using ChatGPT to produce text, and 17% had used it themselves. 30 to 44, 46 had seen it, and 17 had used it. So it's not as
where were these stats from?
these are from Statista.
Okay. I'm always interested to see where they come from. That's interesting.
Yeah, Statista, also
Yeah.
Master of Code Global. So, anyways, people are becoming concerned. And here's the interesting thing. So it seems like every couple days we get some sort of death threat about what AI means to humanity. And the latest one is from the Center for AI Safety. It's a nonprofit organization, and they had an open letter that was signed by more than 350 executives, including researchers and engineers working in AI, of which Sam Altman, the chief executive of ChatGPT itself, OpenAI, was the signature. Is that the way you say it? Signator.
Signatory, yeah.
Demis Hassabissis, the chief executive of DeepMind, Google's DeepMind, and I'm going to kill this guy's name. I could never say it right. Dario Amodei, Anthropic, which is another big one. Also, Geoffrey Hinton, who was the guy that really came up with this many, many, many years ago. In fact, the reason that Falcon, you know what Falcon is, right? Neural networking to protect our credit cards. The reason that exists is because of Geoffrey Hinton.
He's the one that recently resigned to make a statement.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about that in a minute. So, but here's the thing. This letter just had a one-sentence statement. Would you like to know what it says?
I didn't realize that the letter, I thought maybe I was reading an excerpt. That was the letter?
This is the letter. Would you like to hear it?
Please.
Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks, such as pandemics and nuclear war. Okay, so let's just let that sink in for a minute. They just took AI and put it at the same level as like zombie starting pandemics and nuclear war.
Well, particularly the nuclear war one rings true, because one of the things I've been hearing about, AI is the ability for it to make fast decisions faster than humans can in some cases in a warfare scenario.
Oh, absolutely.
And
well, but you know what's more interesting?
That implies that, okay, you're taking it out of the hands of the human. So you better be pretty damn sure it's going to act the way that you want it to. And some of those things may actually, it's one of those good guy, bad guy thing. Who's going to make sure that it's not the decisions that are being made by AI don't somehow end up in the, hit the button, the button.
Right. And it's interesting because it brings us back to what they call the trolley car problem.
The trolley.
Which is, you've got to make a decision between, saving a baby and an old lady and that sort of thing. What's interesting about this, though, and what you just said was, and it was an interesting conversation with Geoffrey Hinton on The Daily, which is the New York Times podcast. And he made me think completely different about this nuclear war issue. He basically said, hey, they're going to use this AI to put it into basically bots or very, very, beyond drones, very sophisticated sort of super soldiers or AI soldiers. And, the first thought is, oh, wow, yeah, then whatever. But what he made the point of, which I hadn't thought of, was how cheap and how much more likely it makes someone to go to war. Like, if you don't have to worry about losing and getting a hassle from, look at Russia. Yeah. He's getting hassled by his people because these kids, unfortunately, aren't coming back from the Ukraine, and all the loss of life, the tremendous, unbelievable, wasteful loss of life that's happening there.
Make it more kind of, back to home. That probably, not probably, that's why Vietnam finally ended.
Right. And so that was one concern. But here's what I'm discovering from this. And I know we want to, go over it, but here's interesting thing. So it seems that like there's two camps on this. There's everybody, needs to, AI could cause extinction. And one of the points that Geoffrey Hinton made I thought was really cool, he talked about the network itself, and he said the one thing AI can do that we cannot is, let's say I learn a skill, and I have a skill now. I can program, right? I love you, but I don't think you're a programmer.
I
Am I
am.
right? There's no way. There is a way. There's a way for me to teach you programming, but you're not going to get to my level maybe in our lifetime. No offense,
No,
but I've spent 30
taken.
years honing this skill, right? And so, and my ability to teach it to you is limited, right? I have ways of doing it, and I might succeed at it. I might not, but I'd have to pour into it. But these things, particularly because of the neural networking and the nodes, once one of these things learns a skill, teaching it to the other nodes is instantaneous. Let that sink in.
That's a good, yeah, there's no degradation down the path like a digital signal.
Once one agent knows how to program in Python, they all do.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Right. And that's what Geoffrey Hinton is warning about. That's why he left. And of course, he won the Turing Award, back in the day for neural networking and what it's done from a fraud standpoint and all these other things. So, but what's more interesting to me is where I was getting was there's basically, it seems like you're kind of being forced to choose, right? You're either, hey, give me what you're worried about with AI. And there's the house is like, oh, the extinction event. It gets smarter than us. And it's I overheard you and Dave, or you and Dave talking, or I saw your lips move, and yeah, I know you're not going to let me complete the mission. And, or I know how to fix, I know how to fix humanity. The humans are the problem, right? There's only one solution, and that's to get rid of them. There's that. But then there's these, I think, much more for me when we're talking about this. If I were them, I'd be far more concerned about the short-term risks. One of the things Geoffrey Hinton made a point of, and on that podcast that I thought was very interesting, he said, any task you give an AI, it's going to realize pretty quickly that one thing that could help it is getting more power. In other words, wow, if I could comb through all this data faster, if I had 50% more power, I could do it. And so if they're enabled to seek out that power, and of course, he was challenged by the journalist who said, well, they can't do that now. And Hinton did his best to explain, and he's obviously a genius. But he tried to explain that things like AWS, which is Amazon's, Amazon's platform for services, they allow you to programmatically address resources. So if I want to take a server, take it from, 2 CPUs to 50 and add, this amount of RAM, I can do that programmatically. I don't have to physically go to that data center and add in these CPUs. And I think that's a problem that people don't understand.
That's a pretty good way of because my first thought was, how does it do it? Yeah, you're right. Amazon Web Services has already created, if it says, okay, I'm just going to
as Azure,
and I'm going to, figure out a way to crowd out other folks, capacity, so I can just take it on myself. Yeah. Which I see other business reasons, whether appropriate or not, to try to do that, not just a purely science fiction evil scenario.
Exactly. And so, it's just interesting, but there's a lot of folks who go, well, why did Sam Altman cite, okay, so Sam Altman says, yeah, he was recently this month, he was in Congress, and a lot of questions asked of him, which were, God, it's so hard to listen to those guys in Congress talk to a tech person. It just makes me want to put a gun to my head, the things they ask. It's like, we have got to do something about this, or at least maybe have them like, oh, I'm going to bring in my guy who's really smart about this that I brought, but they all want the limelight. Why don't you just,
well, that's I was going to say, I get frustrated because there's so much grandstanding as opposed to getting to substance. But you're pointing to another point. Not only is it a matter of grandstanding, but it means you're the one that has to be at the mic, even if you're not qualified to be asking the questions. Yeah, that's true.
And none of them.
Because you know that they've got smart people working for them that could do a much better job.
Oh, they do. They have good questions, but the questions aren't always about the same thing. They're always,
and it's also about the follow-up too. I mean,
right. Yeah. So anyway, so Sam Altman signed this, and everybody's like, okay, well, why would he sign? But he's also full speed ahead right now training GPT-5, which and by the way, the jumps we've seen from 4 to 5, I mean, GPT-3 couldn't pass the bar. It almost passed the bar. It couldn't, it couldn't pass some of the medical exams, but it almost did. GPT-4 not only passed the bar, but it was way high in the percentile of how high it could do it. And it absolutely passed a bunch of medical exams.
And
what is
again,
GP5?
this is another one of those examples that you were just talking about. Yes, we know things get smarter over time. It got smarter over a very brief period of time, too.
Yes.
It didn't take long.
That's, I think, the bigger concern. And my other big concern is there's sort of this thought that seems to be out there that, oh, there's only like 6 teams in the world that can do this.
No.
But I disagree, because what we're seeing that even smaller models can be dangerous. Even models that are, that can run on a home PC. I mean, these Mac M2s that came out are massive powered model, or, software that can do a lot of this stuff. And so you don't need to have, you don't, it reminds me of Whopper. Remember Whopper in War Games? That was the computer that the program was running on. Would you like to play a game?
Okay. I remember,
it was called the
Whopper.
Whopper.
The movie, but I didn't remember the name.
It's called a Whopper. It was in Cheyenne Mountain. Remember, they broke into Cheyenne Mountain.
Yeah.
It was in there. It was a bit, and it was, of course, in a glass room with a lot of lights. But anyways,
that was the
you don't need Whopper
1978 or so, I think. Visualization of a computer, right?
Yeah, but you don't need Whopper to do this. You can train your own stuff now. So is that a reason to run away from it? Absolutely not. It's all the more reason to understand it, because I believe in this case, you have to fight fire with fire.
Well, we're back to the fraudster thing. If you're not doing it, somebody else is.
Yep. And if you're not figuring it out, somebody else is. And not only that, but even if we regulate the crap out of it here in the United States, there's nothing preventing all these other countries from. And by the way, they've been looking for a way to level that playing field.
Yep.
For years. And so, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. But I don't, I just worry. It feels like I'm a little more worried about the local fraud cost, or, those sorts of things than, and when they talk about the global priority, they're talking about its ability to create disinformation. That seems very real. Those sorts of things. And it's just not, this rabbit hole runs so deep.
It's all of the above. There's no reason that, you can't, just everyone's going to have to pick their own areas to focus on. It doesn't mean somebody else is wrong. They all need to be addressed.
Exactly.
Which is also even more broadly than that. I know the other topic that we said we were going to touch on, this is all the conversation around AI. And then there was that article that recently came out, I believe it was Dell's CTO, Chief Technology Officer, who said, we're spending all this time talking about this. There's another computing thing coming down the pike that's going to make this look like child's play.
Yeah. Yeah, which is quantum.
Which, it's funny because we've done episodes. In fact, we'll post a link. We talked about quantum probably 6-8 months ago.
Oh yeah,
and that's all still there. This is just the bright shiny object that's kind of taken on more of the attention, people's limited attention spans, but that's still out there too, creating the same kind of challenges.
Well, quantum, I can't even. And I love this article you found. It's by Rory Bathgate. It's disturbing how badly businesses are prepared to make the most of AI with poorly curated data fueling current models. That's the other big issue. I've been talking a lot about, like, what do you need to have in place? Like, how does this change your rules? Like, if people could suddenly, like, you need to be talking to your staff about ChatGPT. You need to be saying, hey, don't be posting any member data up there or our programs or anything like that till we know more about what their privacy policies are, stuff like that. We also need to talk about the ethics of it. That's a whole different conversation. But then we also need to talk about the data we're fueling it with, because, that's the biggest fear of this whole thing is, humans by nature are biased, like it or not.
Yeah.
It's the way it is. And if you train it on human data, and I'll give you an example. Let's say I train a customer bot on all the interactions from a credit union, because these days most credit unions have these great products like Glia or Nuance or whatever, that's basically taking every conversation that happens between a a member service representative or a call center service representative and a member and turning it into text, right? Which is beautiful to train a bot.
Except
what if
it also is the bad experiences?
Yeah. But what if somehow through that whole thing, there's a thread that's you couldn't see it unless you were looking at it from a 50,000 foot view, which we are incapable of doing as humans, a thread of bias.
Yeah.
What if like old people are getting treated a little worse than everyone else, and the AI picks up on it and it goes, yeah, old people, we're going to push on them a little. We're going to be a little more, we're going to be less, patient with them or something. Now, can you wind that out of there? Yeah.
It's human nature. It may pick up on that, especially because it can pick up on nuances in vocal intonation.
Mm-hmm.
If you wind up with some impatience, you may train your AI to be impatient. Yeah.
So it's the stuff that's coming is, I'm excited and scared. I've never been more excited and more scared.
for good reason.
And every day I do something, I build things in this. Like I built some stuff last night that was in Teams, and I basically I've been trying to work my way towards never working again. And so I was like, oh, I've been training this chat bot, because guess what? I have years and years and years of my own conversations through, all this stuff I've typed online. So let's see what happens if I could train it to be John and then throw it in Teams and see if the staff can figure it out, which my first attempt, it took him about 2 seconds to destroy him.
And it wasn't you.
AI John was gone.
And speaking of both exciting and scary, I know you've been working on some stuff. We got this coming up for an upcoming episode around voice spoofing, right?
Yeah, I'm excited. As a matter of fact, let's tease it a little. Let's roll it. Go ahead and play it.
My voice is my password. Please verify me.
Wow.
So, wow. Yeah. Does that pique your interest?
It does. I'm just based on the wording of it. Yeah, I think we know kind of where you're heading with this.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have to wait and see upcoming episode. So I'm gonna do something I don't normally do and keep it exciting and close to the vest.
But we will say that you are wearing firmly the white hat around your forehead.
Always. I don't have any other hats. I just have white ones. That's it. Well, that said, where can people find you, Glenn, if they want to, have you speak at their conference, or maybe they want a meal prepared by you for their family, or perhaps they have some lawn mowing to do.
I'm working on a turkey melt right now in the other room. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can always find me here on Tuesdays at the Big Cast, that's for sure. But you can also find me on Twitter at 154 Advisors. You can find me through my firm, 154 Advisors. Probably LinkedIn, the best place to do that. Glenn Sarvadi. And if you have any problems spelling that, just go out to the Best Innovation Group website. You'll find my name there.
Big-fintech.com. And
correct.
My name's John Best. I also do lawns and cooking and speaking at events. And if you want to come find me, it's the same place, big-fintech.com. Are we still doing Twitter? I think we are, right?
I'm out there occasionally. And
I'm at JB Fintech.
Got a friend trying to get me to join Jack Dorsey's new platform.
You talking about Mastodon? We should talk about that.
No, he's talking about Blue Sky. I think
Blue Sky. That's right. Yeah, I'm already on Blue Sky.
I have not tried it yet, so I'm going to give that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We need to talk about the difference between that and Twitter. Future episode. Well, listen, folks, thank you so much for joining us every week and listening, and thank you, Glenn, for just all the the good that you've done out there in the world with this podcast. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the upcoming ones.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And we've got a couple of really interesting conversations. We've already teased one of them, and I got a couple others I'm in the process of already got them scheduled. So looking forward to those conversations and looking forward to sharing them with people.
Well, we need like a closing line. Well, till then, subscribe and thank you and be a better tomorrow. How's that? Is that good?
I like that. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll have ChatGPT write us one. Yeah, I'll do that for the next one.
That's a good idea. There we go. Another teaser. Give us a good closing line.
Yeah, give us a good closing line for our podcast. Like, good night, San Diego. Or wait, that's not what he said. Anyways. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Check back each week for the latest from the Big Cast. Or better yet, we hope you'll consider subscribing for free via Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Tweet us at Big Fintech. Email info@big-fintech.com or visit us at big-fintech.com and click on the Media tab, where you can post a comment or check out our archive of hundreds of past episodes. See you next week.